to meet you, Charlotte.
Nice to meet you too.
I'm from Wyndham Community Education Centre. I work there as an education projects coordinator, and I'm teaching is my background. And today, Charlotte and I have been asked to lead a conversation around the wicked problem of how can we inclusively and respectfully meet the literacy and numeracy needs of young people, including migrant and refugee children who have fallen behind their age group in mainstream education. I might ask Charlotte about that, but if there is anybody else there, I can't see who is in the room and who isn't. It might be a small conversation if it's just Sharon. But can you put a question or comments either in the chat or I'm not quite sure, or Sharon, can other people speak or not, or is it just via chat?
We've actually got a nice group, so certainly if we're not all talking over each other, we're happy to unmic us. If you feel more comfortable, you can use the chat if you don't feel comfortable talking. But I think there's around 10 or so of us, so I think it's a nice group to be able to speak.
Right. And do we have the raise the hand function, or should people turn on their camera and actually physically raise their hand to speak?
Yeah, again, if you feel comfortable, you can have your camera on in this forum here. If you're not comfortable with that, that's fine. You do have the hand, which if you use your mouse over the toggle bar, you'll see the little hand waving there, and you're welcome to click on that, and we can ask a question or again use the chat box.
Right. Okay, wonderful. Okay, we might start by quickly making sure that we all, because sometimes even the word literacy is a contested term. So, Charlotte, when you think of literacy and numeracy, what does that mean to you?
Like what we call it sort of maybe in the UK is we call it English and maths. So it's children's skills with their reading, with their spellings, with the comprehension, and then numeracy, meaning the maths, so calculations. It depends what year group you're looking at as well. Yes, I think that's like this is like, and my area really is school transition, so I haven't done very much apart from like my undergraduate degree and master's degree around numeracy and literacy. So sort of the insight I'll bring is probably from my own experiences at school. I can briefly discuss a little bit about what the UK does. Like what I thought was quite interesting was how you were talking about how if children aren't making the grades, they can stay behind a year or they can redo the year. Whereas here, children progress regardless. So no one stays behind as such. Like children move through year groups regardless of the grades, regardless of where they're at, which could potentially be a problem. If children aren't, I suppose, ready to go into the next year group, that could pose a problem. But all children progress. What we have is academic streaming, whereas where children are broken into different classes depends on their abilities. In primary school, that tends to be on tables, so you have different sort of set tables.
So that's interesting because that's what we used to call streaming, and literature seems to show that people who have fallen behind, students who have fallen behind, don't get a positive outcome from streaming, so ability streaming. What does the research in the UK say about that?
It's not like I'm gonna say it's not my area. So when we sort of speak like sort of practice and going into schools, but I can probably assume because we're still doing it that it works, but without consulting the literature, I can't say that for certain because it isn't really my area.
Yeah.
Can I just say that a school in Victoria, I know mainstream schools are usually very hesitant to have students repeat or continue the same year level the following year. So although as a language school we were saying that we do it because one of the main, the research is that it's for emotional and social wellbeing that it can be an issue if students are repeating the year. So when the students are coming to the language school, they're not necessarily away from their peers, so there's not necessarily that that issue. So that's why we would make the recommendation. In a mainstream school, it does happen, but it's rare. It's quite rare in Victoria anyway.
So, sorry, who was that speaking? I can't see who's speaking.
Sorry, Alison.
Hi, Alison.
Hi.
Alison, so what are some of the other ways then that mainstream high schools do look at that situation, that you, instead of keeping someone down a year level or getting to repeat a year level, do you know of other effective ways that they're dealing with it?
Well, I'm in a primary school context, so but I think across the board we have to be seeing that we are catering for a range of students, and even with the same year level, you're going to have students who have a range of backgrounds and maturity levels and educational experience, as well as, you know, a connection with academic schooling. So yeah, it's being able to have some open-ended tasks so you can meet the students where they're at and move them along the continuum. So it's being aware of where you want them to get, and then the steps involved in that, and scaffolding them towards that so they can achieve success. And it's not about, oh, well, you can't do this or you can't do that. It's about where are you at this point and where are your next steps, and making progress, and for the children to see and young people to see that they're making success.
Yeah. There's all different kinds of success as well, and I think where you do have mixed ages working together can be sometimes in what we call extracurricular activities. So your drama, sport, your clubs, maybe environmental club or STEM club, or something which is strengths-based or interest-based to the student that they can be involved in, and then they can mix with different year levels within that space as well, and shine. It might be art or other things. And so I think where schools have the ability to do those extracurricular activities and hands-on activities, it can show people succeeding in lots of different ways and experiencing success. Are there any other ways that some of the people there in the room can suggest are successful?
I don't know so much about success, but I agree with, I feel that some of the schooling, particularly high schooling, are really focused on the academic performance, where, you know, if you are very good at art, sport, whatever other thing, not the so-called, you know, academic subjects, you don't succeed as well. And I've seen that kind of many a time. My field is more kind of disability as well, so that brings in a whole lot of different things, particularly when you're looking at students with an intellectual disability who are maybe not achieving the academic levels at any given time. So it's really, I find it really challenging as to how. That's why I think I've joined this conversation, because I suppose I was trying to get some thoughts around how we can maybe improve the system so that it's the focus on academic is not the be all and end all, because we know that every job out there is relying on people's different skills and not just whether they're good at maths and English.
Yeah, and also, like, we know that team skills and leadership skills are highly regarded in the workforce, and your social skills are highly regarded also in the workplace. And so to bring those skills out and to show students how they can be transferable and how they can talk about them in positive ways is really helpful. And so, and that's where, you know, schools that perhaps do have sporting options or music options or art options, where hopefully it's also connected to community, and their community and the wider community can really show other people and the students themselves what they have to offer. In saying that, we also, I feel, should be responding to academic needs as well, as best we can as well. So is there also a case for more intervention in specific skills and smaller classrooms or specific classrooms? I know, that does sometimes happen at schools, and, if it's called special ed or something like that, then it can have a stigma attached to it and nobody wants to go to it. So there has to be a very creative way of not having a stigma, attached to it, if that's going to be in a way as well. Does anybody else have an experience there?
Yeah, Meg, we've got some hands up here. I see Kerry's got her hand up, and I think Charlotte might as well. Remember when you finish your question to take your hand down. So,
Kerry,
certainly, Kerry, I think you're there.
Yep. I think more cooperative tasks within the classroom where children are scaffolded, but also they're learning off their peers. And if they're problem solving, they're actually sharing the language that can then be, the teacher can then introduce that academic language, and it can be hooked onto an experience that they've had. So it's all very concrete. It's really important.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you have an example of one of those problem-solving activities that you've seen work well?
I think, a science experiment with magnets, or just where they're talking about the concept, the science concept, but they actually don't have, the vocab for attraction, or and then once they've got the image of it in their head, then they can come back as a group, and the teacher can then give them the vocab so that they can go back and use it with the next task. It's not very specific, but
that's okay. We can all imagine it.
Yeah.
And especially nowadays in STEM, when there's so many exciting things happening as well. Yeah, we can imagine that would work.
Yeah.
Sharon, I can't see who's got their hand up. So
that's
if you'd
okay.
like
I'll call out. I've got Charlotte
name.
has hers up, and I see Alison as well. But Charlotte, if you'd like to speak.
I think what Amanda was saying with regards to sort of celebrating children's unique talents and the things that they're good at, that sort of maps onto my own research about supporting children's emotional well-being. So I think helping to sort of build children's self-perceptions, so helping them to establish like a good self-efficacy, a positive self-esteem. I think this will then help them with their education, because if they feel positive about themselves and they sort of have a good internal locus of control, so they feel that they can do these things, it's likely to translate into their grades and into the performance at school. So I think it is really important to sort of help celebrate children's talents, help them to build sort of positive self-perceptions, because this will empower the children to want to improve their grades, but more importantly, help to provide that self-belief that they can actually do this. And with what Kerry was talking about with regards to sort of peer support, that was coming out with quite a lot of the talks earlier, as it can not only help to sort of narrow the gap, but it can provide a sense of confidence for children if they're supported in, say, a group or in a pair, and provide a safe space for them, help to sort of change the perspective and maybe help them to feel that they're not alone. So I do think group work, peer work is really important, and I think it could help overcome this wicked problem as well.
Thank you. Oh, Alison was...
Yep.
Yeah.
Alison, you got your mic muted. Yep.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, I think some of what people have been saying, about wellbeing and setting up for success, some of the practical applications. So for students to be able to see how it connects to real life, I think can make a real difference, because particularly with some of the students we're working with from refugee backgrounds, their skill area in a whole range of things, and building on that and reminding them that they have a lot of skills, whether it be learning language, whether it be, planting and organising a garden, whether it be, there's a whole range of things that they've already been learning in their lives. So having practical applications, I think, is really important for any students who are struggling to connect to the curriculum. and having open-ended tasks or cooperative tasks, as Kerry mentioned, learning from their peers, and also an access to a range of resources. So getting really good resources for students who are perhaps older and their literacy or numeracy range is more of a lower level. So it's having access, creating resources around that, because I think sometimes, you know, you're trying to teach it and you're teaching it using some, even the images can be of young kids, and that can be really off-putting. But there are some great resources around, and I think, you know, thank goodness for the internet, you know, in that way, I think it provides a plethora.
Yeah, I teach with adults, and you're always having to create your own resources, because the children's resources, there are so many, but not so much for adults. But focusing on the strengths based rather than deficits, I think is, yeah, extremely important. Charlotte, you want to say something?
What can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry, I thought I could see your name was flashing, so I thought you wanted to say something.
Okay, sorry, no, I thought you would ask me a specific question.
I was just going to say about goal setting. I think as teachers we often set goals, but involving the students or getting them to set goals. And I think, I can't remember which presenter talked about, you know, having ownership in that is really important. Yeah, ownership in where you're moving towards, and yeah. Yeah.
And what do you think about what Dr. Santino had to say about parenting roles, and what role do the parents have to play, particularly if they're also struggling with their own roles in the community, because it's different? What do people think about that impact, and how to, you know, maybe improve that situation? Anybody have any thoughts or maybe examples where that has worked well?
I think it's huge, and I know when I enrol students and the families are there, one of the questions I need to ask is about their schooling background, and I'm often hesitant to say that because, you know, sometimes to say, well, I haven't been to school, so I ask, you know, what education have you had? Oh, no, I'm trying to think of the way I asked the question, just to try and find out a bit about what schooling have they had previously, or have they not had an opportunity as yet? And sometimes I'll say no, and I said, oh, now's your opportunity, but I also remind them that they already know 2 or 3 languages. I know 1. So again, trying to build them up, because I don't want them to feel bad about saying that they haven't been to formal schooling before, because they've certainly learnt a lot in their lives already.
That's right, and everyone's got actually lots of important knowledge. It's just that schooling, I guess, puts a priority on certain kinds of knowledge and not other kinds of knowledge. But it's really important to bring a community's knowledge to the fore as well, because they do know a lot. Is anybody else who hasn't spoken would like to say something? Or
sorry, Sharon again. Just a 2-minute warning till we have to rejoin the main room, so John can do his close. So I've put a link in the chat how to rejoin back into meeting room A, but certainly if we've got a few more comments, that's fine, but it's just got about 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
I could talk about the role of parents in the context of school transition. So what sort of came out of my own research was how parents' concerns can sort of get translated down onto children. I'm sure this maybe translates with the same context with regards to like academic attainment. So I think supporting the parents can in essence support the children, because you don't want sort of any negative perceptions they may have towards education to sort of impact the children. But equally, we've discussed earlier about communication, enhancing that communication between schools and parents and children. And again, that's important to sort of transition the parents across too, because if parents are, say, still stuck in the primary school mindset, that can be challenging for the children then negotiating a transition to secondary school, and sort of helping them to nurture their child's maturation as they sort of move on. So I can talk about it in the context of that. So some of those lessons might be applied to sort of children's academic well-being as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I don't think I took any of that down. Hopefully when we go back to the main room and report back, Charlotte, are you okay to say a few things? And I'll say a few things and we'll try and remember. And if anybody else wants to butt in or put it in the chat, please go ahead if we missed anything. Is there anything else to say before we go back into the main room?
Doesn't look like there's any extra comments there, Meg. So if anybody wants to click onto the join via this link in the chat for the main room, we don't have to end it. You just have to click over into the link. You guys all done that?
Okay.